for BRICS, it is better to use a common currency that is based on a basket of several currencies rather than to use one national currency, because essentially then potentially you go from one dependency on the dollar towards dependency on another national currency.
Hello everyone, welcome back. The BRICS Plus Summit in Kazan this year is an excellent testament to the transformational changes in global economies and in geopolitics. More than 19 heads of state are right now in Kazan negotiating the details of the new financial system, the new currency that will challenge the United States dollar and with that, US hegemony, as well as discussing expansion plans and future cooperation in areas such as security, trade, and investments. Today, I have the pleasure of discussing the latest BRICS Plus Summit developments with a leading expert on economics and BRICS Plus who personally attended meetings and seminars held this year in Moscow and has all the key insights. I'm joined by Dr. Yaroslav Lissovolik. Yaroslav holds degrees in economics from Harvard, London School of Economics, and a PhD from the prestigious Moscow State Institute for International Relations. He's worked at the IMF in Washington, Deutsche Bank, Sberbank, and the Eurasian Development Bank. Yaroslav runs an absolutely excellent site, BRICSPlusAnalytics.org. It is an extremely valuable resource of unbiased, professionally laid out, very detailed information on BRICS Plus financial system, its future plans, and current developments. It is my go-to resource, and I highly, highly recommend BRICSPlusAnalytics.org. With that, let's dive into the conversation. Hello, everyone. Joining me now to discuss the BRICS Plus Summit that is taking place right now as we speak in Kazan is Yaroslav Lissovolik. Yaroslav, it is so great to see you again. Welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a great pleasure.
It is my pleasure to have you. Several days ago, before the kickoff of the annual summit, the BRICS Plus had a very important meeting or a series of meetings in Moscow. And it is my understanding that these meetings and seminars were focused on the new financial system, something that everybody is eager to learn more about. And of course, you attended those meetings in Moscow. Could you share with us a brief overview and the key takeaways about the BRICS Plus financial system and what members possibly agreed on and what the plan is with regards to the financial system that was discussed during these meetings in Moscow?
Well, first of all, I think it's very important that the focus is finally starting to shift towards the economic side of things in BRICS Plus and towards the financial system. I think it's long overdue, and finally we have very substantial, very high-level discussions about how the financial system of BRICS economies is to operate, how these financial systems of BRICS members are to be interoperable and interconnected. And I think even though there's clearly not full agreement on all of these issues, it's still very important that you have very substantive, very in-depth discussions on these issues. And one of the issues that has been discussed throughout the past weeks, but also throughout the past several years, I would say, especially since 2022, 2023 was the theme of the common currency, the BRICS common currency. One of the names that was given to this common currency project was R5, because all of the letters of the currencies of BRICS currencies start with the letter R. And the discussions centered around the possibility for BRICS economies to at least have some sort of a starting stage, if you will, of the implementation of this project, an accounting unit which would not involve anything in terms of the settlement of transactions, but at least a nominal unit of account that could be used to price transactions in this common currency, and to use this common currency in terms of how the accounting of trade investment transactions is undertaken between BRICS economies. This is a very easy stage, something that can be done without any technical difficulties, and can be based on a basket of currencies, at least the 5 currencies of the initial BRICS members. And currently it seems that this project is placed more on the back burner, and more priority is now being accorded to the issue of a payment system, to the creation of a payment system that would address the most pressing issue amongst the BRICS economies, which is actually, financing and undertaking the actual transactions and settlements across BRICS economies. And in this regard, there has been far more headway than with respect to the issue of the common currency. With regard to the common currency, I think still a lot of the BRICS members are either vacillating or not really sure that this is the way forward. But with regard, I think there's far more consensus amongst the BRICS economies on the need for an alternative payment system. And this is partly the reason, I think, why there's more headway in terms of the technical discussions on the issue of this payment system. So the name for that payment system, the BRICS bridge, is something that is probably also going to change and evolve into a different name, because there are apparently some disagreements with respect to the name itself as well. But in terms of technicalities, I think what is crystallizing is probably technically feasible, and is based essentially on a system that is already essentially operational and has been tested by economies such as United Arab Emirates, China, and some of the others that are involved in the so-called mBRIDGE project. And this is a project that has been sponsored by the Bank for International Settlements and has been ongoing for several years now, has progressed significantly, and has shown that it is possible, through the use of the central bank digital currencies, the so-called CBDCs, in making them interoperable and making them interconnected through a common platform, you can speed up significantly the transactions across the economies that are involved, reduce the costs, increase the efficiency of these transactions. And so the payment system itself can be not just an alternative route of sorts. Furthermore, even more importantly, it's going to be an improvement on the system that is operational now, in many respects outdated, and is in many respects also overburdened by the excessive layers of banking sector intermediation. Essentially, that system of a platform of central bank digital currencies deals away with a lot of the intermediary costs, and accordingly, the transactions are far more effective and cheaper and easier to track. So technologically, it is a superior kind of platform, a superior means of making these transactions. So accordingly, the creation of this BRICS bridge system is not just the creation of an alternative route for developing economies in terms of payment systems. It is potentially a contribution to the improvement of the global financial system. That's that's a very important issue, that essentially these efforts to create this alternative payment system are at the advanced edge of the technological development of payment systems. And this is precisely where the development of advanced payment systems is taking place, with the participation of such important institutions as the Bank for International Settlements and some of the key and leading economies of the world.
Do you expect the new blockchain-based system to be used for trade or for investments and trade among the members of the bloc?
Yes, I think we will see that this system will progress towards a comprehensive system that will address the needs of BRICS economies and BRICS plus economies. More generally, I expect more and more of the global South to be present in this platform. And I think this platform will address both the investment and the trade needs of developing economies. I think the priority and some of the advances that have already been made with respect to mBRIDGE have been focused on trade-related transactions. So we may see that trade may receive a bit more priority during the first stages of the implementation, during the testing. And of course, one needs to realize that the creation of this system, as we've seen with the development of mBRIDGE, takes time. Involves a lot of stages, whether it's the design of the blueprint, the testing, the business use cases that are to be used in the testing of the system, et cetera, et cetera. So there are a lot of stages, but even more importantly, the question is, who is going to participate in this platform, which economies, at least during the first stages. And that is also something that most likely will take time. But I think the fact that some of the BRICS economies already have experience in developing such platforms, and with respect to mBRIDGE, as I've already mentioned, China and the United Arab Emirates, that are members of BRICS, have participated in the creation of such platforms. Other BRICS economies, including South Africa, have participated in the creation of other multi-CBDC platforms. So essentially, these economies already have some experience and could be amongst the leading economies in creating such a bridge platform. And then hopefully, I think we will see a pretty rapid addition of other developing economies to this platform, particularly those economies that are in need of swift and efficient transaction implementation with the economies, with the core economies of BRICS. So the regional partners, for example, of BRICS economies may participate in such a platform. Maybe you could also envision a kind of a regionalized multi-CBD system, BRICS bridge system, or BRICS plus bridge, you could call it, whereby not just the payment systems of individual economies, but maybe also the regional systems of in some of the regions of the developing world. They join this system already with some of the core economies of BRICS, but also with their regional partners. And we're seeing that some of the economies that are not yet members of the BRICS grouping express significant interest in becoming members of this platform and maybe trying to accede to this platform through the regional route, through developing some regional solutions that may then be onboarded by this common CBDC, multi-CBDC platform.
I think this is absolutely fascinating. And the idea of developing a blockchain-based system for the global majority is absolutely breakthrough. Yaroslav, one of the reasons why I was looking forward to having this conversation with you was because everybody seems to be so unsure about whether the BRICS will use a basket of currencies or whether it will just be one currency eventually, perhaps at some point down the line. And the second part of that question is, how will they value, if it is a basket of currencies, as you alluded to just a couple of minutes ago, what is the valuation process for those currencies, and how would they effectively make sure that those currencies are aligned in terms of value? And it's, several months ago we heard quite a bit about gold-backed or commodities-backed BRICS currency. Have there been any recent discussions about those things, and how the valuation process will take place?
Not as much, I would say, in terms of the backing of the common currency, but a lot of the debate, indeed, in the past several years has been revolving around how the BRICS economies may have the advantage vis-a-vis the advanced economies in having far more resources that could be used to back their common currency. My own position that I've reiterated on many occasions already is that it's not just about the resource backing, something that may be considered further down the line, but first and foremost, we have to address the most pressing issues with regard to the economic stability and the underlying stability of the currency, of the common currency, which is the macroeconomic stability of BRICS economies. This is the most important thing. The best backing for the common currency is lower debt, lower deficits, greater macro stability, trust with respect to the economic policies of BRICS economies, with respect to their future policies. And of course, that is going to be enhanced by their policy rules, fiscal policy rules, greater policy coordination amongst BRICS economies, something that we macroeconomists have been talking about vis-a-vis BRICS for quite some time. So I think it is time for BRICS to start to prioritize far more the issue of coordinating and discussing macroeconomic policy. And something that is lacking currently is precisely the forum, probably even an institutional entity that could serve as a focal point for these efforts. That could be the BRICS CRA, contingent reserve arrangement. It could be maybe something else, but I think since the BRICS CRA has already been created, why not upgrade it and use it as a way to try to address the most pressing issue for the BRICS economies, for developing economies, which is addressing the debt issues, addressing the macro imbalances, and it shouldn't be only the IMF. It should probably be also the alternatives and the additional supporting mechanisms coming from the global South. So this is something to discuss, something to address. My understanding is that gradually, finally, we're starting to see in some of the statements, in some of the official statements, a realization of the need to address precisely these issues. So in terms of coming back to your question, in terms of backing the currency, I'm sure that this is something that can be done. I'm not at all against the backing of a common currency if it is launched. then maybe it could be backed with uh, some some resources. But my sense is that first things first, so to say, and also in terms of how the currency is to be structured. Yes, the basket of currencies as um, uh, uh, I proposed, I think, since 2017, 2018. I've been talking about the need for a basket approach vis-a-vis the structuring of this common currency. And the shares, they may be approximated by the relative shares of the respective BRICS economies in GDP, whether in the developing world, in BRICS, or globally. But basically, probably China would have the larger share, but ultimately it would be a basket of currencies of the most liquid of the currencies of the BRICS economies. And ultimately, I think for BRICS, it is better to use a common currency that is based on a basket of several currencies rather than to use one national currency, because essentially then potentially you go from one dependency on the dollar towards dependency on another national currency. Accordingly, there may be also the kind of the nation specific or the economy specific risks pertaining to the economy of the currency that is being used by the BRICS economy. So I think a diversified approach that diversifies some of that risk, and at the same time brings together the potential and the weight of the BRICS economies in the world economy. I think this is probably the best approach. And some of these discussions are on the common currency, I think, are becoming more and more technical, more and more advanced. And I think there's growing realization that this common currency can be launched and can operate technically, not just at the kind of the initial level of the unit of account, but also at the higher levels of a currency that is used for actual transactions. It also depends to some degree in terms of the modalities of how this is done on which countries are going to join this platform. Clearly, in terms of R5, not all countries are ready, not all countries are willing in equal measure. Maybe there will be some additions to that common currency platform coming from those economies that have recently joined BRICS. That's also a possibility. And then I think it's fascinating to look at what happens next year, because Lula and Brazil is taking over the presidency next year, and Lula is, I think, more enthusiastic about a common currency project, and there will be, I think, more of an impulse coming from the presidency of BRICS to try to advance this project.
I remember, since you mentioned Brazilian President Lula, I remember last year he reportedly said that he goes to sleep and he dreams about this common currency that will effectively,
Exactly. Exactly.
serve the purpose of maintaining sovereignty and not being as dependent on the Western policies and Western attitudes.
It's great to see a leader of a great economy of one of the leading nations of the world that is so passionate about the global South, about a better world economy that is based on more optionality, on greater possibilities for countries, for companies. And I think this is his belief. He believes in the idea of reforming the international financial system in such a way that it is open and accessible to pretty much all the participants of the global community. This was great.
Absolutely. During our last conversation, which I think was a little over a month ago, you mentioned that when it comes to expansion, BRICS Plus under Russia's chairmanship is focusing on two things. Number one, it is focusing on onboarding new members that were admitted this year. And
Mhm.
number two, they're working on a new partner model. Until current members agree on the requirements for new partners, which makes great sense, new members will be put on a waiting list. And we know that there are so many countries that are either submitted their formal applications or expressed their interest. So there's considerable interest in joining. Those countries will be put on hold, so to speak, until the current members agree on the new partner requirements. So, what do you expect this new partner model to be, and what will be its main, maybe priority or a set of priorities, and what goals will it serve to accomplish?
Yes, well, I think it's still about expansion. BRICS is still about expansion ever since China relaunched the BRICS Plus initiative in style and in scale in 2022. So initially, BRICS Plus was launched in 2017 for the first time by China, and since then we had another BRICS Plus event in South Africa. But then it died down, and the relaunching of this BRICS Plus initiative really added scale in terms of far more countries from more regions of the global South being invited. And this, Lena, I think this was precisely the trigger, the factor, the key factor that opened up BRICS, made it extrovert to the global community, to the global South. And precisely then, after that, you had dozens and dozens of developing economies, including some of the very large developing economies and regional leaders in their respective regions of the global South, applying to join BRICS. So that strong impulse in 2022 that was delivered by China is still very much felt in Kazan, and was obviously very much in operation last year in South Africa. So yes, BRICS is still in expansion mode. It is not about core expansion anymore, at least for the time being. This is on hold. We are looking at a new category of BRICS partners. I think it makes sense to create such a layer of BRICS friends, simply because de facto you have dozens of countries that have expressed their willingness to cooperate with BRICS, especially in terms of economy, and you need to provide a modality. You need to provide a platform for these economies to have the opportunity to conduct these measures and to cooperate economically with BRICS Plus. So this is something that I think will evolve gradually from year to year. But initially, my expectation, and we'll see, of course, in terms of the actual decisions, the actual details. But my sense is that the economies that will form that partnership belt will mostly come from those economies that have already applied to join BRICS. And these economies will essentially be participating in the summits on a regular basis and in other key meetings of BRICS economies at the ministerial level, at the level of central banks, etc. So I think this is something that creates a closer circle to the BRICS core, but leaves open further the possibility of other modalities of BRICS Plus cooperation. And I hope to see other such modalities, including the possibility of a platform, not just for countries, but for regional blocks of BRICS economies. And that would open up even more the possibility for BRICS to cooperate with not just the relatively large economies, but also with the small economies of the global community. So there are a lot of further possibilities, but I think that very important step towards creating another layer of BRICS partners further shows again that BRICS is open and is capable of creating mechanisms for economic cooperation with different parts of the developing world.
You mentioned central banks briefly. So, cross-border financial messaging system will enable settlements and other types of transactions, such as, for example, investments. Could you walk us through what role would individual central banks of the sovereign states that become members of the bloc, what role would these banks play or assume in this broader system of the BRICS financial settlement system?
Yes, well, I think the central banks will play a key role and will certainly be part of the operation of the BRICS bridge system. So this is definitely going to be an integral part of the new financial construct, with central banks being essentially the key operators of this system. I think we will see further that there are going to be other platforms and other mechanisms that are going to be created. I think there have been discussions about BRICS Clear, and the possibility to bring closer together the exchanges of BRICS economies again with some of the central banks and the respective BRICS economies being essentially the regulators of their respective financial systems and financial markets. It will be important that in these respects and in these segments there is cooperation and coordination across the respective central banks. And in terms of the operations across commercial banks, and in terms of bringing closer together the respective banking sectors of the BRICS economies, again, of course, the central banks will need to be far more active in advancing greater interoperability and the harmonization of standards that will speed up settlements and make these settlements more secure.
This is very interesting. What you mentioned the Bank for International Settlements, and I think in many cases, this entity, of course, since the Second World War, has sort of maintained a sense of mystery, I would say, because it served both sides during the World War II. It, of course, due to the neutrality of the country, but also now I think it's the central bank for central banks essentially. How important is its role right now in the development of BRICS platforms? I know mBRIDGE is obviously it is very much involved in, but what do you expect it kind of what role do you expect the Bank for International Settlements to play moving forward? And how much say does it have when it comes to decision making?
Well, I think ultimately, in a system where it's the nation states that pretty much determine their own economic policy, the Bank for International Settlements really has more of an, I would say, advisory analytical role, setting the standards that different economies may choose to adhere to. And obviously, the Bank for International Settlements has also played a very important role in addressing some of the key themes and some of the key issues in the development of financial systems and the banking sector across the globe. So accordingly, you have stability standards with regard to banking sector that are developed by the Bank for International Settlements. You have, the technological development and the testing of platforms such as mBRIDGE. I think this is an asset for the global community, for the developing economies as well. And developing economies have been quite active in making use of the Bank for International Settlements in terms of improving the supervision and the operation of their financial system. So I think when the BRICS economies discuss the various mechanisms of how to further develop the financial system, the Bank for International Settlements is one of the certainly reference points. And I think one of the potential pillars, important pillars in the new financial construct that the Global South is trying to create as we see now.
One of the key themes of the summit is, of course, de-dollarization in terms of creating alternatives. Not so much not using the dollar, of course, but creating alternatives and using local currencies. Recently, former President Trump stated that he would impose 100% tariffs on those countries that drop the US dollar in their reserves. And of course, this is not a surprise. He supports all sorts of tariffs on any business entity or country. But it seems to me that this type of a policy would only serve as a catalyst to accelerate the drive to move away from the dollar. So not surprisingly, BRICS recently said it is time for every sovereign state that's a member of the bloc to reassess high concentration of US dollars as a component of sovereign reserves. What do you make of these developments? And do you expect to see the Global South speed up sales of dollar-denominated treasuries and reserves as the result of a possibility that more tariffs will be implemented?
Well, quite frankly, the more talk there is about various restrictions vis-a-vis the developing economies for de-dollarization, the more likely this de-dollarization is to progress going forward. And I think we've also seen that partly in the trade sphere, whereby these draconian tariffs coming from some of the former champions of free trade are leading the Global South to start to trade more and more on a South-South basis. So I think that this is really self-defeating and is leading the world economy in the wrong direction. I think if you're the champion of capitalism and you're saying you're the champion of free enterprise, it's about options. It's about competition. It's not about monopolies. It's about competition, fair competition between companies, between countries, between currencies as well. So why not allow for this free competition to take place? If the Global South tries to devise their own common currency project, why not? Why would it not be beneficial for the global economy to have more options and for the economies of the Global South to have their own experiment of sorts? Instead of constantly for the past decades, for many decades, imitating the West, doing something that is a product of their own in terms of, changing the global financial system, delivering their own contribution to the global financial construct. Why not let the Global South do this? I think that only creates a far more creative, diverse, dynamic global community whereby you don't want the majority of the global community to just sit and wait until the golden advanced world um, finally delivers something in terms of another addition to the global financial system. And of course, such a system is not going to be very innovative because the ones that are essentially in control of the system are starting to become far more conservative, less inclined towards innovation. They want to retain or strengthen this unique privilege and the ramifications of the current system. So you want a bit of a different way in which the global economy operates between the North and the South. There needs to be far more, I think, support, more connectivity. You can do it through various platforms, being created for development institutions, regional development institutions, regional development banks. There's finally a platform like that was created for multilateral development banks and regional development banks last year. It was sponsored and launched by the World Bank, but the BRICS NDB Bank, the new development bank, is part of that platform. So that connectivity is starting to be observed, and I think it's very important for that kind of paradigm, the North and the South operating together and supporting each other. That kind of paradigm, I think, is the best case scenario for the global economy. I think that we're not there yet in many respects. I still think that if you look, for example, at the regional integration blocks, there's still no platform for regional integration blocks to cooperate with each other globally. It is not present in the global economic architecture, possibly because some of the regional blocs believe that they're very exclusive, they're very special, they can do it on their own. Maybe it's time to address some of these gaps in the global economic construct, but ultimately, I think we will be heading longer term towards a system that is more multipolar, that provides more optionality. And I think it is for the better, not just for the global community, but also for the developed world, for the US as well, because being part of a safer, more stable global community is for the better for the advanced economies as well.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think it is so counterproductive to, on the one hand, to sanction countries that are not aligned politically. And then on the other hand, come back and say, well, if you drop our dollar, we will impose more tariffs on you. So it's almost like it's self-defeating in a sense, because this is all you have to do to drive foreign nations away from your own currency that is essentially one of the key foundations of the country's prosperity and its influence throughout the world. And here you come in and say, well, we will either sanction you if you don't want to do what we want you to do, or we will just go ahead and impose more tariffs so you can't trade with us. But then, of course, he forgets to mention that, well, the United States can't exactly produce and manufacture the same goods at the same price point. So it is going to hurt the US population. So it's a very self-defeating and sort of very shallow, in my perspective, way of conducting business and even policy making.
Absolutely, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And I think it's very important that the advanced economies don't just support developed economies through various loans or various mechanisms present in international financial institutions, whether it's IMF or the World Bank. This is all great, but there's a more fundamental type of support that is, of course, free trade, more open trade that gives more options for the global South economies to develop. And I think there needs to be far more support for the economic development and regional integration in the economies of the global South. I think the European Union is a great example of a quite successful economic project. It has its own difficulties, deficiencies, of course, but in a lot of ways, it has shown, it has trailblazed some of the possibilities for how regional integration, including in the financial space, including in terms of a common currency, can operate. And that can be a path that could be tested by the various parts of the global South. Why not welcome and support the efforts in Africa, in Latin America, in Asia to create their common currencies, regional currencies that would bring together the potential of the respective regions and would deal away to a significant degree with the volatility, with the instability, with the problems that are inherent in the fragmented currency world of the global South currently, whereby individual economies, they may be weak, they may have insufficient reserves and face various difficulties associated with capital flows. Regional economies are more stable. The regional pooling of resources and efforts is something that could be very, very supportive and very important, not just for the global South. My hope is that for the next several decades, the most significant driver of global economic growth will not just come from the global South, but will come from the regional integration impulses, from the closer cooperation, South-South cooperation in the respective regions of the global South. You now look at the various regions of the global South and you see a very sorry picture. You see a picture of very low intensity of intra-regional trade. Most of the trade is done either with other regions, with advanced economies elsewhere, but the regional platforms are not very well developed. And you need far more effort, I think, in the global South to unite efforts to structure these regional institutions, regional economies, regional infrastructure. And that in itself, if this is pursued in a coordinated way, supported by the advanced world, supported by the leaders of BRICS on both sides, that could be a major driver of economic growth, of economic openness, of the growth in the middle class for the coming decades. So this is my hope. This is the best case scenario, if you will, of where we should be headed in the coming decades.
Of course, and they will serve as a tool, as sort of that link between economies of the South that will help them develop their economies and prosper and develop ties that will help them effectively overcome certain challenges that have to do with poverty levels, that have to do with even security issues. So I think this is absolutely important. And we see that the global South, the global majority, has recognized that, I think, because there are 19 heads of state that are attending the BRICS summit right now. There are so many more countries that are represented on different levels, foreign minister levels, that are interested and are participating. So I think we see a really, really dramatic shift in this desire to find alternative ways and alternative solutions that would benefit the global South. And of course, as the bloc develops its own financial system, it's also focused on finding ways to cooperate in a range of other areas. And there have been multiple conferences and meetings leading up to the summit itself, ranging from BRICS plus security discussions to maybe new partner negotiations. Besides being united by a common goal to shift away from the dollar, what other areas of cooperation do you feel the bloc's members will prioritize in the near future?
Lena, my greatest hope, and I've been talking about it for 7 to 8 years now, is trade liberalization. There's so much that can be done in terms of trade across the global South. In some cases, import tariffs are still quite high, and economies in Africa would greatly benefit from lower tariffs in some of the largest developing economies, say in Asia or in Latin America. There's tremendous scope for reducing these tariffs. It can be done in a coordinated way. Furthermore, my belief is that one of the items on the agenda of BRICS should be another trade round of the WTO. We haven't seen a trade round in the WTO, I think, for several decades now. Why not BRICS creating a grouping within the WTO, and on that basis, on the basis of that platform, champion and lead the launching of a new trade round that would bring tariffs lower and would prioritize the needs of the least developed economies in the global community. So for me, trade is an absolute must in terms of the coming years, in terms of priorities. And I'm, again, very hopeful that during Brazil's presidency next year, we will see more of an emphasis on these issues. I'm very glad to see that in the course of this year, there's more talk about financial cooperation and the platform. We're starting to hear about an investment platform for BRICS. That is something that I think potentially could be very important and also boost the capital flows and the development of investment and financial infrastructure on a south basis. I think it's great that we're starting to hear the word platform. Thinking about BRICS in terms of platforms is very important. I think there are so many platforms that are yet to be discovered by BRICS in terms of, for example, a platform for regional development institutions in which BRICS countries are members. That is a natural ally and a natural platform for the new development bank. Then you have the new development bank also already operating closely with the development banks, the national development banks, that are also an important layer of support for BRICS in the financial sphere. And then, of course, one should also remember about the sovereign wealth funds. The sovereign wealth funds are some of the now largest players in the global financial system, and this platform a platform that brings together the largest sovereign wealth funds of the global South would have an enormous size and enormous leverage in the financial markets and in terms of development and in terms of potentially addressing the needs, say, in the ecological space in terms of green financing. So there are a lot of things that are yet to be discovered. I've been arguing in favor of a platform for sovereign wealth funds for BRICS economies, I think, since 2018. And the only country in BRICS that does not have a sovereign wealth fund right now is South Africa, precisely the economy that I believe is probably would benefit the most from having a sovereign wealth fund. But such a platform, if it is created, I think would be very beneficial for BRICS in terms of financing, mobilizing financing, and working together with other parts of the financial construct of BRICS, the new development bank and the regional development banks.
You mentioned investments, and of course, today was day 2 of the BRICS summit. Could you maybe give us a quick overview of what has been announced in terms of BRICS investments, and why do you feel it is an important step towards that multilateral cooperation and finding new ways to trade, to invest, and to develop ties for the global South?
Yes, well, in economic literature, there's one paradox that economists have been finding difficulties reconciling. And this is called the Lucas paradox, whereby, for some reason, while developed economies, they grow at lower rates than developing countries, they basically attract capital from developing economies rather than the other way around. Typically, in economic theory, you would think that you would see developed economies channeling their capital towards developing countries. So that paradox is mostly explained in economic literature by the underdevelopment of the financial infrastructure in the global south across the developing countries. And so, accordingly, you need far more intensity, you need far more of a development of this infrastructure and of the south south investment flows in order for that paradox to be resolved and to start to see more of a south south kind of flow in terms of capital. I think we are starting to see signs of that with China becoming one of the largest investors in many parts of the developing world. But I think it's very important that it's not based on just one large developing economy, that it's more broad-based. And so that's where I think this potential investment platform, BRICS investment platform, may come in. We need to hear more about the technicalities of that platform. But I think potentially this may be something that involves precisely bringing together the main financial institutions and the developing institutions of the global south to jointly co-finance some of the priority projects, some of the largest projects out there. It may be also something that will address the needs of households and their investment needs, and the need to diversify investment and their investments by gaining access to investment possibilities in other countries, large emerging markets, something that may be an exciting new beginning for how the savings of the global south are going to be used and channeled in the coming years.
This is absolutely fascinating. And to our viewers, Yaroslav runs a wonderful website, BRICS Plus Analytics. I will link it in the description below. I highly, highly recommend it. Absolutely valuable content that is not biased. It's just very factual, very, very valuable. So please make sure to check it out. And Yaroslav, thank you so much for the insights that you shared today. As I told you earlier today, here in the United States, not many people understand the role that BRICS Plus has in shaping the new multipolar world and how it will eventually affect them as well. I learned so much from you today, and I look forward to continuing this conversation.
Same here, and thank you so much, Lena. It's always a great pleasure to talk to you.